Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is from 1963, Twice Told Tales, starring Vincent Price. Now this is the Roger Corman, Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe film that's not a Roger Corman, Vincent Price, Edward Allan Poe film. This is United Artists, not American International. Trying to get some of the success of the Roger Corman, Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe films. But this time it's 3 stories. It's an anthology based on Nathaniel Hawthorne stories. This is the Kino Lorber Region A Blu-ray, which has an audio commentary by film historians Richard Harlan Smith and Perry Martin, and it has a Trailers from Hell with Mick Garris. So as I say, there's 3 stories. Dr. Heidegger's Experiment, Rapancini's Daughter, and The House of the Seven Gables, which Vincent Price was in the 1940 version of that story with George Sanders, which is excellent, and you should check that out. So we'll start with Dr. Heidegger's Experiment, which co-stars Sebastian Cabot, which, if you're not familiar with his name, if you're a fan, as I am, of Disney's The Jungle Book, you'll certainly recognise his voice, because he voiced Bagheera, the Black Panther. So all we needed was James Earl Jones and Orson Welles to turn up in this film, and then we'd have 4 amazing voices. But they don't. Orson Welles and James Earl Jones are not in this film. So we're introduced to these 2 old men, played by Cabot and Price, who have old man's makeup on. And they are 2 friends who meet every year on Cabot's birthday, neither of whom married, but Dr. Heidegger. Bride died, or bride-to-be died the night before the wedding, and she is in a crypt just outside the house, as you do. And every night on his birthday he toasts to his bride-to-be. Hopefully they'll be reunited in heaven. It's a stormy night, there's thunder and lightning, very, very frightening, and the crypt door is torn asunder by the lightning. So the 2 men go out to investigate, and Alex, Vincent Price's character, he's the scaredy cat and doesn't really want to go into the crypt and see skeletons. Obviously Dr. Heidegger's a man of science, so they both go in. They see his bride-to-be, his coffin has fallen down. He has his empty coffin next to her, so when he dies he'll go in there. How romantic. But as they move the coffin back into its place, the lid falls off, as coffin lids are prone to do in these kind of films. And we see she seems to be perfectly fine, apart from being dead. So she's been dead for 38 years, but there's flesh and bones on her. She just looks as though she's asleep. So they are a little bit confused by this, but they notice something has been dripping in the coffin and it's eroded it, and it's in the lining of the coffin It seems to be a strange liquid that's dripping from the ceiling and is dripped onto the coffin. So the doctor, being a doctor, takes a sample of this, and he's constantly asking what could have made her be preserved for 38 years, completely untouched by the ravages of time and death. So he tries out this liquid on a withered rose that he kept in a book that he's to be buried with as a sign of his love for his bride-to-be. And the rose comes back to life. So, aha! So the doctor decides to drink the liquid to see if it will bring him back to his younger self, which it does, remarkably, miraculously. Then Vincent Price, despite being a scaredy cat, he drinks the liquid and he's transformed into his younger self. Their hair and old man makeup is completely gone. But then Dr. Heidegger gets an idea. Can I bring back the dead with this special liquid? So he tries out the liquid on his 38-year-old or 38-year dead bride-to-be. And that's where I'll leave the story. Needless to say, complications ensue. Past history rears its ugly head between these two friends. And the ending is a real sting in the tail, and it's quite wonderful. Now, a lot of anthology films sometimes keep the best episode to last, but in this case, this is probably the best episode. Cabot and Price really have wonderful chemistry, and again, it's an interesting change in Price's character from the scaredy cat to revealing his true nature that's been hidden all these years. So it's a lot of fun. We then have Rapancini's daughter, which is decidedly botanical. This is set in Italy, and we're introduced to a young woman who lives in a garden with her father, also lives in a house, but the house has a big garden with a very strange looking plant which seems to let off poisonous gas. It's purple and red, and apparently from China, because usually in these stories anything bizarre and exotic usually came from China, because obviously the West, it's kind of theories about the Orient are all these strange animals and strange plants and strange medicines. But the girl has found an admirer in a young student who, as always in these kind of films, is really bland and uninteresting, and square-jawed and American. But it's the relationship between Vincent Price, who plays her father, and the woman, because he has, skirting over the science, but he has essentially replaced her blood with the venom from this plant, so that if anybody touches her, they will die. And he has done this to protect her from sin. So again, it's one of these stories where the person, in this case Vincent Price, who's quite delusional, is doing something crazy, but for the right reason. So that almost counts as doing something good. So to save her from a life of sin, he has made her poisonous to the touch, so no man will touch her, or her tracts of land. And again, that's as far as I'll go with the story of that one and how it's resolved. Can this young Lothario meet the woman of his dreams who is poisonous to the touch? Again, Price is fantastic, because let's be honest, the reason we're watching this is for Vincent Price. And again, as a man who's trying to protect his daughter, but just going about it in perhaps the wrong way. I mean, we wouldn't like to judge, but perhaps he's going about it the wrong way. And then we have the final story, The House of the Seven Gables, which again, go check out the 1940 version with Price and George Sanders for the full length. This one again is about two warring families, the rich land grabbers and the poor, who built the house and then it was taken off them by Vincent Price's descendants. Vincent Price is certainly the clear villain in this one, as he returns to this family home because somewhere there's a vault hidden in the house that was built by the descendants of the quote-unquote poor family, and he's determined to find it. His sister lives in the house, who almost gives as maniacal a performance as Vincent Price does, and they're both determined to find this, despite the fact that the house is haunted. It was built in the terror. The house apparently still exists in Salem, Massachusetts. But this one, I mean, the 1940 film is much more subtle. This one goes full on haunted house. It goes full on Amityville. Objects move about. The walls start leaking blood. Paintings start leaking blood. You know, there's not a lot of subtlety in this one. It just goes full shaky set as the ghosts are displeased. And Vincent Price's young wife seems to be possessed by ghosts of the past. She seems to know things she shouldn't really know. And she teams up with the bland descendant of the family who built the house. But at this point, Vincent Price doesn't really care about his wife or whether she's going to leave him for the descendant that his family has despised all these years. He just wants the money and will do anything to get the money. And you can probably guess how this one ends. So the film is 2 hours for the 3 stories. You could argue the first story, as I say, is probably the best one, and it's in actual fact the shorter of the 3, I believe. I wasn't timing, but it feels like the shorter, and maybe it just went by quicker. The second and third episodes could have probably done with a little trimming, but not excessively, because more Vincent Price is always better Vincent Price, and he is fantastic in all 3 stories. It's just a fun little film. Is it as good as the Corman Vincent Price Poe films? Probably not, but it's well worth a look, especially if you're a Vincent Price fan, or if you're a Bagheera the Panther fan. You can certainly check out Sebastian Cabot in the first story, which is probably the best one. So thanks very much for watching this random review of Twice Told Tales, because apparently they've just been told twice. And hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.